All right, guys, welcome back to the Next Level Agents podcast. I'm excited about today's episode, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to welcome my buddy Andrew Abernathy. Andrew, first of all, welcome and thanks for doing this with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Dude, you and I sat down and had coffee, maybe a month or so ago, and we talked about a lot of things, but we talked about your business model, and I'd love to sort of unpack that, but also the thing that caught me was actually how long ago you started your business and kind of started formulating your business and what you wanted it to look like. So give the listener a little bit of backstory about you and kind of how you got started in business, and then we'll kind of work forward from there.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. So going back just a little high level, grew up on a family farm in northern North Dakota, kind of by Canada there. 6 siblings. When I was 10 years old, started doing grain cart combine, $5 an hour, kind of working on the family farm. And when I was probably 11 or 12, and I started kind of doing puts, calls, futures on the grain that we had in our bins and learning that from my dad. And then when I was 14, the market crashed. That was actually '09. 14th birthday was March 23rd, not far from the bottom, which was March 5th, I believe. And had some, I'm going to call it dumb luck, just I had 4,000 saved up after buying a go-kart for 2,000, who wouldn't? And I opened an account in my dad's name because I wasn't 18. And I bought Ford at 99 cents, Bank of America at $3. And that $4,000 I was able to turn to, luckily, 80,000 by the time I was 16. Again, just perfect, just lucky timing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I started in the real estate business. I found an apartment in Bismarck, North Dakota, 3 hours south from us, and it was 1.2 million. Decided to put an offer on it. I had my $80,000 in escrow hard with non-refundable.
Hold on. How old were you?
16.
16. You tell me you weren't shitting your pants during this time.
I didn't know any better. I wasn't shitting my pants yet. I was shitting my pants when the banker said, "I'm not giving you a loan because you have no balance sheet and we need more money." I'm like, "Oh no, my 80 grand's gone.
Like,
It's not refundable. What the heck am I doing?"
This is all I got.
Yeah. So that was the oh crap, oh shit moment. And so that's when I was literally kind of just forced into raising money. And that's when I said, okay, well, I have no money for lawyers, for legal docs. So what am I going to do? And so I printed off Warren Buffett's 1956 partnership agreement and whited the names out, went around to some farmers, and I made a no-lose situation for him. I had no choice. I'm like, hey, I'll work for free. If we lose any money, my 80 grand can be the first to go. Pro rata share. So I raised 300 grand and got the loan, got the apartments, and went back to high school.
As a 16-year-old, you went out and raised 300 grand, and then
By mistake, basically, but yeah.
that's wild. Well, I mean, looking back, what you know now, I mean, can you imagine a 16-year-old going out and doing that?
No. I mean, it was kind of almost like, God, you're cute. Like, I appreciate it. Like, yeah, I'll do it.
Nice
I love
effort,
what
kid.
you're doing. Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I mean, you've got to have some extra discretionary funds to like give a 13 or 16-year-old $300,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like some serious discretionary
Yeah,
funds to do
like,
that.
see if the kid shows back up.
I mean, it's crazy enough to give that to like, say, a seasoned,
Yeah.
seasoned investor and someone like that, but much less a 16-year-old. So you do that deal. What happens with that deal?
Yeah. So again, just the first few deals, I'm going to say fortunate for a while because I really wasn't skilled, and I'm still learning, but I really didn't, harness the skill for a while. So the oil boom did hit, similar to the 80s after we bought it in the Bismarck. And the city called me because we had these apartments right next to a middle school, and they wanted to do an addition to the school. And they bought the neighbor apartments out already and tore them down. And I found out about it, and they were trying to offer me, it was like 1.5 was the first offer, about 13 months after we bought them.
Wow.
13, 14 months. Like, this happened fast. The oil boom came in. Bismarck was a big hot spot. And we held out, and 16 months in, we closed at $2 million. So it was just a really fortunate deal. Oil boom was the driver.
When you sold that, did you already own anything else, or was that your only asset?
Pretty much everything. I mean, I had some farmland we were buying. Let's see here, 2000. I was 17, 18, I probably had another $200,000-300,000 I built up in some other deals, just farm related. But this was big. I mean, this doubled my net worth because I went back to that investor and they gave me 400 grand of it, of the million net after bank debt we got on that deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when I was like, they said, hey, I want you to keep managing my money, but we'll pay you this time. So that's when I started the Abernathy Holdings officially, and we started raising some money. I was a junior in high school, senior.
I gotta ask, like, were you thinking like, shit, this is easy?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was, but I was always setting goals. Like something about me, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs and driven people is the one thing I've had to learn, and I've learned recently, I have a beautiful wife and 3 kids, and they've helped me kind of, just understand and learn things a little quicker than normal. I have to enjoy the journey and not just sit and strive for the destination,
Yeah.
right? And so at the time, it was always about the destination, which since I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a billionaire. And it was never about the money. I just wanted to do it. Warren Buffett was a big fan of mine, and I just had all these mentors, and I just wanted to do it. So to answer your question, it was always just the next thing at that point in my life. It was not, oh, this was easy. It was just, okay, cool. Like, I'm not proud of myself. I need to do this. And then when I did that, it was, I need to do this. It was never like kind of a sit and smell the roses.
That's awesome. That's crazy. So, did you like go directly into more real estate? Like, I could see what I'm getting at here is like, whether you're 16 or 18 kind of doesn't matter. It's an impressionable age.
Yeah.
And it'd be really easy to go. And I kind of, obviously I know a little bit of the fast forward of the story.
Yeah.
So it would be really easy to go, yeah, real estate's it. Like I'm always just going to do apartment buildings or whatever,
Yep.
and kind of fall in love with real estate, or maybe even over sort of romanticize it. Tell me about like your growth and your journey from that point forward, and kind of how you started building things up from there.
Yeah. So they wanted to invest back in, and I was going to put all my money back in. So it was about $1 million roughly cash, $1.2 million to be exact, because I had some extra money I put in. And so I went and I had the money now to do an official PPM, private placement memorandum. And the lawyer asked me, how much would you like to raise? And I was like, well, I'm going to go raise $10 million, right? Set big goals. Like, I didn't even think I could do it, but why not try? I was 17 at the time, 18. And farming was really good. It's all about timing. When you're raising money or whatever it is, you got to be in the right spot, and you always got to plan for that. So farming was really good. I was in the right spot. I was asking the right people, and every door I knocked on was about $50,000 to $100,000. And so every day I was raising $500,000 to $1 million, and I hit 10 million within a year, and so raised it. And then to answer your other question is what was next. Warren Buffett was, again, always a mentor. I've read everything about him since I was 10, and he was in the operating businesses more so, not so much the real estate. So I can explain from 2012 when I graduated high school to 2017, which is a period we're about to go through. I label it as I was great at nothing, good at a lot of things.
Okay.
I was way too diversified. We bought an equipment dealership in Great Falls, Montana. We still own it. The company's done great. We bought into an insurance company that's publicly traded on the NASDAQ. I got a board seat at like 24. I had to change the law in Alabama because I was under 30. It was the whole process. We bought a helicopter company, which did not go well. We lost 15% of our portfolio. That was in 17 when I finally realized I needed to learn to focus. There were some mistakes made. Our share price, to give you kind of context, our share price in 2012 in Abernathy Holdings was $37,000. In 2017, prior to the helicopter deal going under, we were at 70,000, so pretty good. And it went down to 55,000 after that little mishap. And that's when I had a real big, just sit down with myself and just kind of like, who am I? What are my goals? What am I going to be the best at? And that was a turning point in my life.
That was 2017.
Yep. Company was probably worth about 20 million. The holdings was at that point. So some pretty good growth there. But, a lot changed at that moment.
Was it just the realization of, oh shit, I lost money, not just my own?
It was, and there's a lot of negativity that comes with it. We're all human, right?
Yeah.
So you, at the time, I had 2 kids, wife, and what I was telling myself once it happened, right? The things you're telling yourself, because it was a hard time. You know, maybe you were just lucky. Maybe you're not really good at this. Maybe this shouldn't be what you're doing. You know, just all the pity party. There's a few things in life that you should never. There's a lot of emotions that humans have. A couple of them that are worthless are envy and self-pity. And I was in self-pity at that moment, and I gave myself, I'd say, about a week of self-pity, and then finally I just said, Andrew,
No, you can say it.
either make this the best turnaround story ever, or quit. But don't sit in self-pity for the rest of your life. It's not worth it. So that was the moment.
Yeah, it's funny how easy it is to get stuck there. I've noticed a lot of times the people I know, some of them people who I like a lot, they're not just stuck there. They're aware that they're stuck there, and they almost cling to it like it's well, I'm just here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hold on, if you can be aware of the fact that that's what you're doing,
Yeah.
like, then make the decision to change. Like,
Correct.
for a lot of people, it's just like it's a lack of awareness of how they're behaving and the emotions that they're feeling. So if you're aware of it, like, hold on, if you're aware of it, now you can change and go a different direction.
Yes.
That's a tough part. That's
It is.
when you don't move out, when you realize you're there and you don't move out. And I would agree, like, there's no value in feeling pity for yourself.
Nope.
I don't think it moves you forward. I would imagine if your wife was sitting in the room with us, she would also agree that that was not very, very beneficial for the household and for your guys' relationship at that time, for you to be in that mindset.
I was not my best self. In Fargo, actually, Ben mentioned this, Ben Kinney, and I want to mention it. There's 3 stages in success, and I hope I don't butcher it, but he said this, and I really, really, really I'll remember this forever. It was the first stage is you want to prove everybody wrong. That's stage 1. And I was in that stage. Everybody's got a past. Everybody has a reason to have the chip on their shoulder. I have my reasons, and it's longer than this show can go on. We all have them, okay?
Yep.
So I wanted to prove everybody wrong. And when that moment happened, that was the end of that chapter. I proved everybody wrong, but I had a mishap. And then my ego stage started, which is I want to show everybody that I'm the best and rub it in their face. And 2017 was the start of that. That was chapter 2. And I am now working to phase out of that chapter. I'm still in it a little bit, but I'm consciously moving out of it because most people don't move out of it. Most people stay in it too long. And now I'm going to move into the stage where I'm going to build leaders around me and build this to the next level and build other people and shine the light on them like they deserve. But this moment was the end of chapter 1, stage 1, starting of chapter 2, stage 2. And I just loved that saying that Ben mentioned. I just wanted to mention it today.
Yeah, I've heard Ben talk about that a few times, both privately and publicly. And I think a lot of us as agents, majority of the listeners here are real estate agents, they go through it too. And I think most entrepreneurs, real estate or not, can relate to, I'm going to prove you guys wrong, right? In fact, that's why we became entrepreneurs, is like, somebody pissed us off. Like, we had a bad boss.
Yep.
We had a bad experience with, like, the corporate world or whatever. We're like, fuck this.
Yep.
Like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And so we get there, and sadly, a lot of people never even make it out of that stage.
Very true.
But then you get success, and you stick around in that second stage you mentioned, which is like, no, I'm going to prove to you that, like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. Now I'm going to show you that I'm the best. I'm going to prove to you that I'm the best at this. And then I think that's the even sadder stage is staying in there for too long. That can serve you. Like, that serves you for a little while. I very specifically remember a moment in time where a friend of mine said something to me that kind of snapped me out of that. And then the next stage is like, well, I'm going to prove to you that you can do it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to help you do it, and I'm going to help you do this. And like you said, kind of building up leaders. And I don't think that that can be overstated, because those are stages you see leaders in any industry kind of go through quite often. Like, you can see that theme just show up over and over again.
It is, and that was my issue starting. So if you're an entrepreneur at a young age too, you spend a lot of time, like almost when you walk into a room, if you don't tell everybody how great you are, you just look like a 10-year-old. And I have a baby face, still do. I'm 30 now, by the way. And that was my issue. Is one, I'm passionate about what I do. If I could be in any conversation and talk about business, I would. And when I bring up dollars about things, it's not arrogantly. It's just about talking about the deal. And that was my issue for the longest period. Is one, to raise money that I raised, I had to basically tell people what I did when I walked into a room.
You got to communicate
It, because it would not be shown from my age. And then two, when I talk about dollars from passion, it comes across. So that was tough for me, and that was a stage that I'm still working on phasing out. But again, it served its purpose. I mean, we've raised, again, the story goes on, raised tens and hundreds of millions. But so it served its purpose, but it's time to phase out.
Yeah, I like that. So 2017, you kind of have this kind of come to Jesus moment with yourself of like,
Yep.
all right, we're gonna move on, or we're gonna completely move on.
Yep.
What's as you make the decision to focus more, or I should even say focus on less,
Yep.
focus on fewer. What was that decision like? What did you come to, and how did you arrive at that?
Back in, to rewind a little bit to answer that, when I was 20 years old. So in 2017, to give you context, I was 23, 24. So 4 or 5 years prior to that, I'm a big believer in just reaching out to people. Just call. So I called the 10 wealthiest people in North Dakota, and the wealthiest one actually called me back, Gary Tharaldson, and he gave me the time of day, and we started spending some time at the Village Inn and having breakfast together and just talking. Well, in 2017, after knowing him for 4 or 5 years, he was the individual that told me I'm good at a lot of things and not great at anything, after the Bristow helicopter deal. And he made his wealth on basically manufacturing hotels. He's built 500 or so to date, 400, became a billionaire off of it. And so when he told me that, that's when I went back to the drawing board. And I wanted to come back to a breakfast the next week with a new plan. So I want to give that credit to him. And so I went back to the house and I said, okay, like, what can I manufacture? I'm like, well, everything I've done in real estate's really worked out. You know, the operating business, one worked, one didn't. I'm like, okay. So then I did some research on what's the quickest way to becoming a billionaire. Everything about it was real estate. But there's nobody that went from $1 billion to $200 billion on real estate. It was like the first step, and then you had to diversify. So I'm like, okay, well, the operating businesses, maybe that's the second chapter of my life. Real estate can be the first. Real estate will always be there, but maybe real estate's like 80, 90, 100% of what I do for the first billion, and then maybe it's 20 to 30% of what I do for the next 100-some billion. So I wanted to find something similar to hotels. So in 1982, Marriott, they started in the 70s, but in 1982, they were kind of on the path of an asset-light business. So Marriott owned 99% of their hotels. They were phasing out. Now they own 1%. So they're a brand instead of an asset-heavy business. And Gary was the one that latched on early, became the best developer, best owner, best manager, and they put their name on the building. And that's how he made his billions. So anyways, after looking at 1,000 ideas, and I'm a big believer that there is not just one idea. There's millions of ideas. You just have to pick one and make it the idea.
Yep.
Period. Put the blinders on and make it the idea. So don't be searching for the idea. Just pick one and make it the idea. But I found self-storage. And in 2017, Public Storage, Extra Space Storage, CubeSmart, Life Storage, which is now Extra Space, they, for the first time in history, allowed people to use their name on other people's buildings as a brand, because they were an asset-heavy business, just like Marriott in the 1970s. So I went back to Gary and I said, I think this could be a good business. Class A self-storage was a new thing, because storage has been around since
forever.
I mean, China in 500 BC was using it, but then in the 1970s, 80s, the United States started doing it, but it was a different purpose. Well, in 2010, 11, Class A self-storage became a thing. Multi-story, looked more like a hotel, very convenient, right? So I said, Gary, I think this is it. I think this is just like hotels. Public Storage will run our facilities. We'll be like the first one to sign up. So we jump on his plane. We head out to Salt Lake City, head out to California, met with Public and Extra Space. And then on the way back, he looked at me and said, "This is your $1 billion idea."
That's awesome. That had to feel good to go, okay.
It felt very good.
Yeah. To go, maybe I'm not crazy. There's
Yeah.
at least one other person who happens to be pretty smart and
Yep.
who you value your opinion, his opinion, who says, yeah, no, you're onto something.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. You know, so like what happened? I mean, did you already have storage at that point? Did you
No.
already have no storage at all at that point?
Yeah, no, we had HUD buildings and commercial buildings and apartments and equipment dealership and helicopter company.
So you just
insurance
had
company.
random shit.
Oh, I know. I couldn't tell you what I did in an elevator. That's for damn sure.
You just had a bunch of different stuff.
I didn't know who I was.
And so okay, so you're on that airplane and Gary says to you, this is it. This is your $1 billion idea. Like, what do you
What do you do next?
Yeah, what do you do?
We landed, went to the office, and I started liquidating everything except for the equipment dealership because he vertically integrated. That was his uniqueness. He not only developed the hotels, he owned the general contracting company, he had the equipment, he was the realtor, he vertically integrated. So by the time the doors opened on a hotel, he already had a 20% IRR. So I wanted to do the same in storage. The equipment dealership was perfect. We manufactured commercially, city, state, and construction company equipment. So I'm like, perfect. We can manufacture our own water trucks, job trailers, whatever we need on the construction site, rent it to ourselves. And then everything else I liquidated. We had about a $20 million pile, and we went and did 2 projects. And the first 2 actually were here in Arizona, and that's why my wife and I and our kids decided to move here. Because I just told Lacey, I said, hey, I really want to go big in this, and there's more opportunity in the West Coast. In Arizona and California, there's 50 million people. There's 700-some thousand in North Dakota. I said, I want to go big in this. I want to become a billionaire in self-storage, be the biggest self-storage owner developer in the world, and I'm not going to be able to do it from here. So we moved our whole family to Arizona in 2020.
Nice. That's man, that's going big.
Yeah.
That's going big.
Lacey, my wife, is a gem. I mean, the fact
Obviously.
that can't say enough about her, but
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing.
So you move out here, and you start doing deals here. What are you learning at this point? What are you doing as you start, building your own Class A self-storage?
There was actually, it was hard there. Well, the first couple deals were great. We bought our first sites for $1 million. One of them's on 202 in Higley, just a beautiful site for $1 million. This was back in 19. We bought that, and moved here in 20 to start building it. And then the euphoria hit. A market where it's not good to be a buyer, it's good to be a seller. So we built a couple sites, just gold mines, just crushing it. And then this market hit, and it was really weird where I couldn't find a deal. I wanted to ramp up, but it wasn't the right time, right? Like, I'm a big study. I read like a book a week. Like, I'm just like really a studious person of history, and it wasn't right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I did know, though, that raising capital and deploying capital, it's very rare that they coexist. What I mean by that is the time to deploy it and the time to raise it are always different timings.
Yeah.
Right? Which is counterproductive usually. So I knew it was a good time to raise money. So we did just that. I looked at my Matt and Dan, a few partners of mine, and I was like, hey, if we're going to raise money, it's now. So we had a concept. We had a couple prototypes, had the capital. And so we went and raised, I think, like $45 million in like 11 months once the COVID checks. That was when the PPPs and all that money was coming out to owners that probably, a little more than they needed. And so we raised money quick. Everybody had money. That was fun. Then come the tough part, patience. We raised all this money, and it wasn't right to deploy it. And we had to sit there. We didn't start deploying capital heavily until 7 months ago. So think about that time frame. That was hard.
That's a couple years.
That was hard.
You and I talked about this when we had coffee a few weeks ago. This was a conversation that came up in our last mastermind, which was, what do I buy? There's people right now that are like looking for deals, and to some extent feeling like I have to buy something. I got to do a deal.
Dangerous.
I got to, and the consensus we came to in our mastermind was like, no, you don't. Like, you could actually hold on to the cash for a little bit longer. Like I know we all look at today's interest rates. Like, it's easy to go get 5.5%. Like, it's not like where it was, a couple of years ago where it was like 0.0001. Like, it's actually a decent return with as close to zero risk as you can be. There's nothing wrong with letting some cash sit there. I know it's kind of like anti-capitalist everything to have a lot of cash in there. You hear all these mouthpieces that'll tell you, if you hold on to your cash, you get poorer every day. And I think that's true in some environments, but in an environment like this is like, first of all, you're not actually going backwards anymore. The interest rate's pretty decent. And even if it wasn't, though, like, doing a deal for the sake of doing a deal, just to get something done, like, that's how big mistakes happen.
Yep, and that was a big thing, and same with like 1031 and stuff. Loved using 1031s, but sometimes people put tax savings above good deals.
Yeah,
and it can get really dangerous. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole too much, but the cash is trash, and the worry of inflation and putting a dollar here, the purchasing power. So about 6 months ago, I started doing a lot of research on prior countries with the reserve currency and kind of how that went, just fiat, non-fiat, just kind of understanding the cycles. I think that's very interesting, and I think we're kind of at the end of a cycle. And there's 6 cycles in theory in an economy, right? And usually the first cycle starts after a war. So World War I started, and there was a reserve currency was formed, Bretton Woods, United States reserve currency. Okay, but go way back. So Habsburgs, that was the reserve currency way back before the Dutch. That was before the world even knew there was other world parts around. So we'll leave that alone. But the Dutch, they're the ones that basically invented the market. They had the first market crash with the shipping company that they had. Isaac Newton actually lost his house during that because he leveraged everything. That was like the first market crash. They invented the market. They had the fastest ships, and it was all about trade. Well, then all of a sudden, when they became a developed country and their wages became really high and it was really hard to compete, Britain, they were like, well, we can build the same ships for a lot more affordable because we didn't have the inflation of wages. So then eventually the cycle happened, a war happened, and then all of a sudden the Britons, they became the world reserve. They became it, then obviously the United States became it. We were the third one. And during these cycles, you have the war, and then you have stage one. Stage one is kind of the pretty productive. A lot of things happen. Stage two is pretty productive. A little bit too much fuel. You kind of start, in stage three, you start having kind of the the pleasures, or people spend more time on what pleasures them and not so much more productive, right? The first 1 and 2 stages, it's all about productivity, and then the services and the pleasure and traveling and all of that kind of come in the Gilded Age, like all of those things, right? And then that happens, you start pulling fuel on it. Then the fiat, non-fiat, so the gold standard, they separate. So you have the dollar can now be printed without anything backing it, and that becomes really dangerous because it's basically you have a bunch of people that they're incentivized the wrong way. I mean, it's cocaine to a cocaine addict, right? And so then you start getting to the point where the debt gets bad. So in 1951, our debt to GDP was like 120%, 117%. In 1985, it was the lowest in history. It was like 51%. And now today we're at 122, 123%, okay? So you kind of have this trough. Well, what's going to happen in theory, based on the history, is you're now going to you have to basically inflate away the dollar. So if you own bonds, so I'm a big believer that the 10-year is going to stay in a 4 to 6% range for the foreseeable future, because you have to pay someone the interest because they're worried about what they're going to get paid back in the future. It's going to be a deflated dollar, going to get paid back on a deflated currency. So it's going to be a tightrope. There's a beautiful deleveraging, and then there's a very bad deleveraging. Like the Dominican Republic, I think it's Dominican. Yeah, what is it where they printed so much money they were basically burning dollars?
Yeah.
That was a bad.
That's a bad.
That was a bad
deleveraging,
example, like extreme bad.
Yeah.
And then you have the beautiful deflation, or basically beautiful deleveraging. So the only way to get rid of debt, there's three ways. One is you basically go bankrupt, which why would you if you can print money because you have the reserve currency? So we won't do that. Two is a balanced budget. Probably won't happen. Three is inflate away the debt. So right now, Japan basically has a free. They're good to go. They've basically the world said you keep your interest rates low, we'll let you inflate away your debt. They've given them that hall pass the last 2 years. Well, now they're raising interest rates, and that's the only reason our Treasury 10-year stayed low for longer, because all the Japanese were buying our bonds because it looked better than theirs. Well, now that theirs is going up and that buying demand's gone, now ours is going to have kind of having that pressure. So to answer your question, now the question is, what do you invest in? Probably, right? In an inflationary period, there's a couple things. Real estate's really good. In 1980s, when inflation happened, that one time, stagflation, right away it was bad because real estate is very interest rate sensitive, and interest rates react to inflationary pressures. And the short-term Fed funds. The short-term Fed funds basically go up, and it doesn't get rid of inflation. It just kind of evens it out. It extends the inflation pressure, but it lowers it today. If there was no federal fund rates like short-term, it would just go up really high and go away quicker. Fed funds basically evens it out, and it just lasts longer.
Yeah.
They just take some from the later and add it today. So basically, real estate, first you have to wait for that correction. So why would you sit on cash and wait for the right deals? Because first you have to let it correct. Then in real estate's really good. But then it gets bad again, because in the 1980s, when that inflationary pressure was there, that's what caused the 1991 bubble. There was literally people buying real estate at a lower cap rate than interest rates because they were hedging inflation, which created a euphoria into the real estate market, not because of the value, intrinsic value, but because of an inflation hedge. And that's what caused the 1991 bubble bust, because everybody was thinking, like, I'm just going to buy it because inflation will make it worth more.
Right.
That was after the kind of correction. So real estate's good, just be careful on timing. The other really good thing is asset-light businesses. If you have a company that's making 30, 32% return on capital deployed. So if you have one company that has 20 million in assets and it makes 10%, so they're making 2 million a year. Or you have another company that's making has 10 million in assets instead of 20, and it's making 20% a year, so the same earnings. You should pay more for company B, because if inflation doubles, you only have to add 10 million here to double the real earning power. You have to add 20 here. So you have to be asset-light businesses. That's the other good thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That was a rabbit hole. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So your thing of choice right now happens to be self-storage.
Yep. Because of affordability, there's all that factor too with printing of money and wealth gap.
Is it also too, I always think of, like, with storage, I could be wrong. Like, this is more of just me thinking. This is not me, like, saying this is the truth or gospel or anything. It's just, like, I think of as people kind of become more nomadic, like, especially we've seen that since COVID. People move around. There's a lot more of an ability to work remotely in this country, probably in the whole world, but specifically in our country. And it just kind of feels like more than ever, people are waiting longer to sort of plant the roots, like start the family, buy the first home, which means now it's delayed for the second home. All that stuff sort of gets delayed. And to me, there's always been people that needed storage, but it seems like to me like there's more people that need more storage now and than there has been in history.
Yeah. So real estate's a location, right? It's all about the spot. So I'm a big believer in the Sun Belt. 1 in 5 Americans in 2030 will be 65 and older. And on top of that, individuals now have the choice to work wherever they want. I, for example, was in North Dakota, and I decided to move to the Sun. And I have a lot of stories of people that have jobs that are flexible, and they all decided to move to the Sun. So I'm a big believer in the Sun Belt. I'm also a big believer in areas that are hard to build in. I like barriers to entry. It's like California, Arizona. Florida's not too bad. Texas we don't build in just because it's too easy to build. And I don't want somebody building next to me. Once I build something, I want to know that it's the only one that's going to go in that 3-mile radius. But to answer your question on storage also, storage is more of an extension of your home now. So back in the day, not even that long ago, a few years ago, people visited their storage unit once, maybe every year or two. Now people are visiting it every month to every week, because renters, because of affordability issues, and or if you are a buyer, you can't afford many square feet. In Arizona, you look at homes now that are being built, there is no extra space. So we're not really storing too much junk anymore, you'd say. It's more, hey, you're going to go grab your kayak for the weekend, or your bike to go ahead at Flagstaff, or your Christmas decorations, or your Easter decorations, or things that you need access to on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. So that's the use of storage. It's an extension of your home. It's an affordability factor. We're 20% less per foot than apartments. You obviously don't want to go spend $300 a foot on a house that is used to store a box, right?
Right.
And nobody's building that anymore because nobody wants it. And other thing is Amazon and drop shipping. So we're basically a virtual mall. You buy your hat online or your shirt online or whatever is from Amazon or any virtual store. They're drop shippers. Well, most humans are able to get past that first phase of success. Their room is not big enough, their spare bedroom, because they are selling sunglasses online or shirts. But they're never big enough for a warehouse on their own. And the Amazon warehousing is way too expensive. So they say, well, $200 a month, I can get a storage unit. That's their warehouse. So when I walk up and down our hallways, we're adding about 1 million square feet a year now. And we look in, they're boxing in goods. We're a mini mall. And it's being shipped out to everybody. In human nature, I do know, going from that to their own warehouse is very rare. I'm not trying to talk down on people. I'm just saying.
No, it's a big jump, though.
Big jump. Most people don't do it. So they stay there, and we can serve that purpose.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Do you, and I'm literally asking this out a lot. I've literally never thought about this until now. Is there a business model, and maybe it already exists for like, I'll call it the WeWork of warehousing, like let's say you and I are like, dude, there's this great warehouse out here on, I don't know, whatever.
Yep.
Scottsdale Road, and we're on Scottsdale Road in Greenway Hayden. Let's just say there was a warehouse across the street from where we're at, and you and I decide to buy it, and we're like, we might be selling, maybe you and I are selling widgets.
Yep.
And we only need 10% of the room, but is there a business model somewhere for someone to go, you know what, I'm going to sell this to the other people that might be a little bit too big for a storage unit, or maybe they're not even too big, but it's just maybe this is an easier option for them.
Yep. Kind of the in-between.
Yeah.
And again, this is the first time I've thought about this. I'm just
Same.
brainstorming. This is great. These man caves, they call them.
Yeah.
I think that in theory would be that middle, because they basically have a huge building because you're going to need the subdivision, because people won't know each other. They have to have that trust and the security. So my thought is that's almost what that next phase would look like. The reason we haven't gone into that is because of the scalability. I want to be able, so right now our pipeline's 200 million. I'd like to be able, so that means we're breaking ground 100 million a year, because a pipeline is divided by 2. It takes a year to entitle, a year to build. So 200 million, so that's 100. I'd like to get the pipeline to 500 to 600 million, so we'd be breaking ground on 250 to 300 million a year. The problem with the man caves is the capital deployment opportunity and potential is not as scalable. So each one of our sites is 20 million. Each one of those sites is 6 to 10. And then the other issue is once they're open, they don't have the national brand. Not saying it can't be created.
But there's not currently one.
Not currently one.
You can't take like Public Storage and have them run your man cave storage, if you will.
It's turnkey right now for us, and they don't charge much. And I know some people listening would be like, why don't you create your own? And it's I've learned that from advice that sometimes swimming against the tide is not worth the squeeze. It's 4% management fee we pay public, which is minimal.
That seems so
small.
Like almost free.
Yeah, it's free. And so I'm just like, yeah, it'd be cool, but I don't need to do it for ego. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if my name's on the building, and it's like, what's the best deal? And so I just haven't felt like that path is worth the squeeze.
Well, I think about like your mentor and other people who have made a lot of money in development in the hotel world. I mean, the model works. We already know that we know how this story ends, and it can be very successful without you ever having to get your hands dirty on that kind of the management side and that daily, operational side. And so it's like why get your hands dirty if you don't have to?
Yep.
Maybe one day you're at so much scale.
Yeah.
You've got so many units where it's like, I'm actually losing money now by not doing this.
Yep.
Sure, maybe.
Yep.
But wouldn't that be a great problem to have?
And it's easy to add then.
Yeah.
Better to add then.
Well, yeah, then you got all the resources the other thing too I think about is like at that point, if you got to that point, you're such a large company that you probably have so much more access to talent in your world, whether they're actually already in your organization or just around you, that then kind of turning the key to go, no, we're going to be the management company too, and we're going to run the day-to-day operations, that you actually have people already there where it's not hard. Whereas like right now, if you were going to go do that, it's hard to hire really good talent.
Yeah.
Even if you're good at it, it's fucking hard.
And the algorithms that Public have and all of that. And when you're big enough, you could go to Public and say, hey, we're looking to do this unless you guys are willing to go down to 3%.
Yeah. Or
You know,
or do you want to buy this instead or something?
Yeah.
Like who knows? Like the thing is, I think if you focus on whatever it is that you're good at, right? And in this case with you, we're talking about building the storage, right? You're actually talking about developing and building. And if you get just so good at that and forget about the other noise and the distraction,
yep.
that in turn will give you whatever opportunities you want, whether it's to sell, whether it's to get a discount, or whether it's to, you know what, I'm going to operate this myself.
Yep. Gives you all the options. And you always want to be on that side of the table where you have the choices.
Yeah.
Stack the deck in your favor. And so for us right now, like for example, the site's $20 million each one. We'll put down, call it $8 million in today's to get that the cash flow we need for the bank debt. So $8 million. Well, we're 50%. So Gary actually did eventually. He came in now, and he's 50-50 with Holdings. So Holdings is 80 investors. My wife and I still own a third, and then they own the other 2/3. Gary comes in at 50. Holdings is 50, Abernathy Holdings. And then we 100% own the verticals, Holdings does. So we have our own general contractor, garage door dealership, equipment, and land team, development team. So we net profit about $600,000 to $500,000 to $600,000 per build, net profit of all of our employees. So on $4 million our cash, right, 50%, we're sitting there making almost, they call it 15% return on our cash on cash before the doors even open.
Wow.
And that's how we've been able to have this crazy. So to give you kind of back up here, remember we mentioned the shares were 37,000, 70,000 in 2017, down to 55,000 in 2018. They're now 300,000. That is the growth from 17 to today.
Wow.
55,000 to 300,000. That is the proof of what concentration can do.
Yeah, I think it's just so easy. Whether we're talking about your business or my business as a real estate agent, it's just so easy. Like we see these opportunities, and I could go do this, and I could go do that, and I could do this, but it's like, forget about all the shit you could do.
Yep.
What's the thing that you could be great at, and like just focus in on that.
Yep, and it's hard.
It is. I'm speaking as much to myself as I am
Yeah.
to anybody listening to this, because I do think that's the hardest thing, is to just go, I'm going to be good at this. You and I were talking before we pressed record today, and like sometimes you got to just make a decision, whether it's a deal or a relationship or a line of business where it's like, all right, I've got the information I have. I'm going to make the decision, and now I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that was the best decision I could make.
Yep. And or make it the best decision you could make.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Put your blinders up.
Put the blinders
Go.
on and sort of go to work and making sure, basically proving yourself right.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the answer. And again, it's every day. I struggle with it as an entrepreneur. It's not going to go away. Your urge to do everything will not go away. It is a daily decision. You have to wake up every day and make the choice. Just like marriage. Like I wake up every day to choose to love my wife, and that's why we have a happy marriage. You have to wake up every day to choose to do that in business too.
Yeah, you do. You wake up with all these choices. A buddy of mine who sells a lot of real estate and has been in the business for a long time said to me this last December, he's like, I just made peace with the fact I'm in the boredom management business.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, he's like, I have to manage my boredom. And I'm like, I totally relate to that.
Constructive boredom, I like to say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of boredom out there.
You know, man, one of the things that kind of, I would say, gave me a lot to think about is, and sorry if I'm putting you on the spot here, but I was asking like, well, what about you own? I think you just said you own a third.
Mm-hmm.
You and your wife own a third of the shares. Obviously, you probably draw a salary for running the business. It's your job, as you should.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I asked you the question we had coffee. Like, but what if you want to make an extra 500 grand, or what if your goal is to personally take home an extra million a year, or whatever? Fill in the blank, right? It's a placeholder. And you're like, yeah, I'm good. And I'm kind of like, but then why are you doing this? Like, why are you building something so big? And I think you answered it earlier, but I'm going to ask it to you again that way. Like, going and building the next, $500 million worth of self storage and getting it up and operational and cash flowing really doesn't actually add any income to your world.
Mm-hmm.
It adds net worth, and I understand that side of it. But like, so then why do it?
Yep.
And then that's my live question. Why
it.
do you do this, dude?
The why. So I think first off, I wanted to make sure my incentives aligned. I think you show me your incentive structure in your business, and I'll show you your company's future.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that.
So that's a Munger
yeah,
quote,
exactly.
right? Okay.
So, like for example, in our operating businesses, I am in charge. We have a very decentralized operating system, a very centralized capital allocation system, similar to Berkshire, and so I incentivize our presidents, our managers, our subcontractors of our subsidiaries. I incentivize them on capital deployed. So, for example, in our equipment dealerships, anything above a 20% return on capital deployed, I'll give them a 10% bonus of. Because every dollar they make that they can efficiently put to work, they're just going to send back to me to redeploy, which is the goal. So the incentive, you can go on all day like, well, what if they over leverage? Well, they're not incentivized to leverage. It's on total capital, not equity. Well, what if they do unprofitable business? Well, they're not incentivized. Like I can poke holes in that all day, right? So I wanted to make sure the incentive system was set for me. What is my incentive? Well, my incentive is I have the same shares that I bought at the same price as every other shareholder, same class, same voting rights, same distribution, if we ever have them, so on and so forth. So I know that my wealth growth, net worth-wise, is aligned with theirs. We don't do profit shares. We don't do bonuses. We don't do anything to me. There is no anything, which is very unique, and I think I did that because I started in this business without knowing what was normal, and I think that actually became a positive eventually because I created something that's very unique. But to answer your other question on why not wanting more cash flow, and if you do want more cash flow, why'd you tie your hands? So I made a promise to my shareholders from the start. Eye contact, shook their hand, which is blood to me.
Yeah.
And I basically said, you're not going to find me doing a bunch of things outside of the holdings, outside, farm operations, stuff like that. You basically are investing in me, and that's my promise. The other thing that I said was that I'm going to have 90+% of my net worth aligned with yours. So if you do well, I'll do well. If you don't do well, I won't do well. And the other thing that I said was I want to keep my salary in a manageable rate. So my salary right now is a rate that my wife and I live a good life. There's a study out there. I'm going to raise this number because I read about the study a few years back, so I'm going to inflation adjust it. It's roughly $200,000. Up anything above $200,000, your happiness doesn't go up. $250,000, anything above that, same thing, doesn't matter. To that point, there's a lot of incremental happiness.
Yeah.
There is nobody that I've met that has $1 million to $2 million a year in discretionary spending that's happier than somebody making $200,000. Actually, I would argue that their life is worse and more complicated. They have more things, more homes, more cars, more problems, distractions. Their kids don't love them. And there's so many negative things. So it's like I'm not saying I have issues with it, but it's like, why tempt myself with it? Because if I get the salary, now I have to sit there and make the decision, well, do I reinvest it or do I go buy a second, third,
Do I
fifth
just
home?
go spend extra money?
Yeah. So if my thought was, okay, well, if Lacey and I have enough to have a nice house and I drive a nice pickup and she drives a nice car and I love our kids, we're home with them, we do trips, we don't think about going and eating. Like, that's the life I wanted. So what I did in my mind was I created the life I wanted. I figured out the cost of it, inflation adjusted, and I made my salary that. So I don't have any temptations to do anything counterproductive to my happiness anymore. But my wealth will grow, and my goal by 100 is to be a trillionaire. My goal by 50 is to be a billionaire. And I'm probably going to give most of it away when I'm done because I want to give my kids, as Munger would say, and Warren, enough to do anything, but not too much to do nothing.
Yeah. I'll tell you what though, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Is we might have talked about this at coffee. I don't remember because it's rare. I can't shut up about this book. There's this book called Die with Zero.
That is on my list. I have not read
Okay,
it yet.
I
It
think,
is on my list.
I
From
think
you,
we
I
talked
think.
about it. Yeah, I think we talked about it.
Yep.
And yeah, yeah, what I want, just like, offline is, I can't wait for you to read that book and
Yeah.
then for us to go have a cup of coffee
Chat about
and like talk about it. Cause I'll share, I could share all day long about the things that kind of I picked up from it and learned from it. And I'd love to hear your viewpoint, whether because it changes the viewpoint or your contrarian viewpoint to it.
Yep.
I think you'll probably have both as my guess. I tell a lot of people, I read a lot of books. I actually had one of our listeners last week. She totally caught me off guard. She's like, you probably read more books than anyone I know. And I'm officially at least second place to you. I know that. But she's like, what are your favorites? And I'm like, well, I don't know. If we're talking categories,
Yeah.
if we're talking the category of money, for me, it's Morgan Housel's Psychology of Money, and it's Die with Zero. And in a lot of ways, these are two books that, as different as they are, they go together. In my opinion, they're like two sides of the same hand. And so I'm super excited for you to read that book.
Yeah, psychology is money's a good one. And I think the biggest thing is like money's a tool. And actually, money's a magnifying glass. Like if you're
Yes.
not a good person and you have a lot of money, you'll be worse. You'll be a worse person. Like everybody will see it. You'll do worse things. If you're a really good person, you can do more good things. If you have a lot of money, so really, it's a magnifying glass into who you really are. My mom was a teacher, and she changed the thoughts of lots of kids. And my dad was a farmer and fed the world. And my sister's a doctor, and one works at the church, and their sister's actually a teacher too, and so on and so forth. I think for me, my passion and what I'm meant to do is make a lot of money and then give it away and change the world with it. That's how I'm going to change the world is to give money away. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I believe that's why I'm on this earth.
It's awesome. I think most good people I know, they feel some sort of sense of duty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the right word. Even desire to be able to give money away to help people. Like, I know you're not waiting to give money away. Like, Ben shared with me the story of like when you guys first met, and I know you guys both put up a lot of money for a great charity.
Yep.
And, Ben's always the first guy who will quietly donate to something. And I know he's probably going to give away a big chunk. Probably it starts with a B as well.
Yep.
At some point towards the end of his life or when he's gone. It sounds like you're, going to as well. And I think most people want to be able to give money away. And I think the hard part, though, is when you get to the type of monies that like you're aiming at and the type of money that Ben also, just like you, I truly believe doesn't do it for the money. Actually, the bigger problem becomes there's so much money, it's actually hard to give away.
Yep.
Morgan Housel and I actually talked about that in an interview that we did. I want to say in January, and like he was like, problem is it's kind of hard to give away money sometimes. Like there's not
efficiently.
There's not great ways to do it, and the way that I don't know about you, but like the way I'll donate to charities occasionally. Like if you were like raising money for whatever charity and it was like because it was important to you, I'm going to donate it because of our relationship, right?
Yep.
But what I prefer to do is like, hey, this family needs money for X, and like, cool, I want to donate to that, or so and so is raising money for this, and it's going to help their cousin because of Y. I love to be able to do that, or to help somebody out with something that like, truthfully, is never going to go to a charity, but like they need just some help in life. Like we've all been there. That's the type of stuff I love, and I got to imagine that when you get to the place where you're headed, that gets a lot harder.
It does. So I started again, I'm not really good with naming things, so I just put Abernathy on it because nobody sees it. So that's the Abernathy Foundation. Nobody sees the name, but it's on the paper. Anyways, I believe that giving money efficiently is as hard as making money efficiently.
Yeah.
And Abernathy Holdings is basically the vanguard of private companies. It's a low management fee. There's no management fees really. Way to make money. And so I wanted to make something that could be a conduit to give money effectively with also no fees. And so that's what we did. We started this foundation, and I select charities like I select my businesses, efficient, ran by good people, so Unseen is one that Ben and I have been supporting, and they fight human trafficking. Well, for me, in good faith, to funnel money through it, I'm basically the conduit. I actually went to Thailand myself last January with the founder, and I met with the groups that we were going to be donating to. There's 45 partners across 50-some countries. And the cool thing about the model is it's the lowest feed per dollar donated nonprofit I've ever seen. So what they do is they'll find actually organizations across seas that are doing good work with human trafficking, and they'll pour money into them. They'll teach them how to raise money. They'll give them marketing material. They'll teach them how to do all these things. So last year, every dollar donated to this group produced $7.92 of actually dollars donated to the fight.
Oh,
It
wow.
was fuel on the fire. And so that's what Ben and I have been donating with a pie and all of that's what's gone towards. So
And that's called Unseen.
Unseen. And
Is that the URL?
yeah, so unseen.org. It's
Okay.
yep. And so if Abernathy Foundation or go right to Unseen, doesn't matter. Everything for us funnels there. But that's what my wife and I have been really contributing to, because the biggest thing, like you said, is how do you give efficiently? And Than, the founder of that group, become very good friends with him. He is, when you find somebody that's that magical, you just hold on.
Yeah.
He will be the person that will help me give away my wealth through my life.
That's awesome.
And he is phenomenal. And there's one thing he taught me. I do want to bring this up. I questioned giving anything in my life until the end, because I said every dollar I give today, every life I save today, I'm sacrificing 22 lives in the future at a roughly 15% compounding rate, right? Gosh, is that fair to them to sacrifice 22 lives for every one I save today? And then all he said was, Andrew, there's one thing you're missing in your formula. I'm like, what's that? He said, that life that you saved today, that kid in Thailand or wherever it is, what if they change 1,000 lives? What if they become a doctor? So last year, my wife and I were really proud to say we saved 4,500 lives last year with our donations personally.
That's awesome.
It just takes a few of them, and that whole formula changes. And it gives me goosebumps. Like, that was pretty magical.
I was going to tell you, that was, what I was kind of getting at too. When you read Die with Zero, he makes that argument. And so what I was going to say is, like, it would be easy to think, because the first rule of compounding is don't interrupt it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a great student of Munger and Buffett, but I understand that rule. And however, but you have to interrupt it in order to give it away.
Correct.
And so to me, the only way to look at it is, if I'm going to give this away and I'm going to interrupt my compounding of my dollar, then to me that means, dollars, and I learned this from Naval, dollars are not the only thing that compound. And so that life that you save today, granted, you could look at it as like it's 1 today, 15 in the future, but that 1 will also compound. So it's actually still 15. Maybe it's even more.
I would argue now in the new.
I would argue that it's more.
Way more. I think that one comment from Than Bartson changed my life, and thousands of others. The butterfly wing effects, Ripple. I can't tell you how many lives he's changed just from that one comment, let alone everything else he's done in his life.
That's awesome. So what's the URL for your foundation?
So ours is abernathyfoundation.com. Pretty simple.
Yeah, it's easy.
You can find it on andrewabernathy.com too. And that, again, is just a conduit. There is no cost. It is just the reason I put my name on it is because if people trust me making them money, which they have, a lot of people have, it's like, hey, I can help you also give it away. You already trust me. And then it just goes to, most of it right now goes to Unseen. So
awesome.
I find organizations that are efficient, and that's what we give to.
Well, dude, I think that might be the perfect note to wrap up. I'm going to call this part 1.
Part 1.
I think there might be another one in the future. So
I appreciate it.
Andrew, thanks for taking the time out today and spending time with us today on the Next Level Agents podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's It's been fun.
That's been a good one. All right, guys. We'll see you again next week.